One of the things that folks ask at church in normal days is how do you become a member at the church? And we don't have normal membership. We don't have normal people, so we don't have normal membership. And we are
probably normal pastors either.
No, nothing's normal at all about us. And so our thing, though, if most people are familiar with it, but not everybody. But the thing that we have is a church covenant that we actually share with people and ask if this is the kind of people that you would like to be around. You're in. And so what we wanted to do today was to spend a few minutes talking about the 4 points of a covenant. Each point has 3 subpoints. Mm-hmm. Just going through those and talking about maybe some observations that that we might be able to apply these to in the context of the situation.
Yeah, our new lifestyle for the next little bit.
Yeah, and so our first point is I will protect the unity of my church. Mm-hmm. That's the large overarching point, number 1 of 4. I will protect the unity of my church. And the first subpoint of this is I will protect the unity of my church by acting in love towards other members. And there's a lot of that going on right now. And one of the first things that you can do is let all of us. Now, me, you, Rachel, Brown, mm-hmm. Blythe, let us know what your needs are, and then people are going to get jumping on it. And so,
and I think this is something we've always been pretty good at for the most part, right?
It's hard when they're shutting you down, though.
That's the deal.
We're non-essential. Did that hurt your feelings?
Yeah, of course it did.
Yeah, I was like the pot shops are essential, but we're not. And
people are talking about their schedules not changing all that much yet, and I was like, I don't have a schedule anymore. Like I spend so much time in groups of people, in public places, or with people who are now labeled as high risk. It's like everything that we're told as pastors, especially, like visit the poor.
Exactly.
Visit the sick. Like you're supposed to go see them.
All Matthew 25, James 1 at the end.
It's kind of not there. So what do we do in the meantime to show love to each other? I'm on the phone all day long right now.
I'm on the phone all day long as well. And that's one thing that I can offer anybody out there is even if it's texting. I literally had 4 different texting conversations going at the exact same time. Normally I would meet with somebody at 2 and then at 3 and then at 4 and then at 5. And I met with all of them between 2 and 5. And I was sending some wrong responses at times.
Oh, that's pretty fun.
So the same person got all of the wrong responses though. But so whatever we can do though to act in love. Now, one of the things that I would say, we talk about love as meeting needs, and people need to feel accepted, significant, and secure. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that you can do during this time is to maintain contact with people in the church. And you may even be thinking about who that I know may be feeling insecure at a time like this. And we've got a lot of people that are living by themselves. We've got several people in the church that have very, very little contact with anybody right now because they're living by themselves. And some of them are in that higher risk category. And a phone call or even a card. I know the Hayes kids are sending out cards to people.
Like snail mail?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a church. I think they're sending them to people in nursing homes and things like that.
Sure,
that's one thing that we could do. People might be feeling insecure. They might be feeling insignificant if they're not getting any phone calls at all. This is a good time to love people in the church by just reaching out to them that way.
Especially, I think, maybe even people who you don't know particularly well yet, right? It might be a good time to just be like, hey, you know what? I don't know a ton about you. Are you doing okay? Tell me about your kids. I refuse to think that this is even though so many of the things that the church is about, that the church is supposed to do are kind of shut down for a little bit, I don't think that means that we're going to become weaker and weaker because of it. And I think that's what you're talking
about. So a practical thing that can happen right now during this time is that there's somebody that you would like to make contact with, but you may not have a number. Zach or I or Lois, Cook, somebody can probably connect you with a phone number or two. So yeah.
And don't gossip.
Yeah, it's a good one. That's the second point. Yeah. Refusing to gossip. And I'll protect the unity of my church by refusing to gossip. And one of the things that I think about when I look at that is it's not necessarily gossiping that I'm worried about, because I don't know that a lot of that goes on that much in our church anyway. It probably does, and I just don't know about it. But nobody gossips to me because I pinch on it real fast. But the one thing that I do see happening is there's a lot of opinion expressing on social media. And if you get real political about this, you're going to create sides. And when you create sides, people are going to have to agree or disagree with you. And they may not do it to your face. You may not be agreeing with some of the things that you're seeing on social media. Let it go with as much grace as you can. Don't feel compelled to get into an argument. And by the time we get through all this, and we will get through this, maybe one of the ways to protect the unity of our church is just like, I'm not going to engage in arguments, even if somebody in the church is almost asking for it. There's a lot of different things you can think about this. Who you want to blame, who's helping you and who's not.
Sure.
And so I'm just thinking, let it go.
I think that's probably a good idea. It's kind of the way that I've done the political scene for a long time. And
it's a good idea in real life. It's a better idea in a pandemic.
And doesn't mean that I don't have some thoughts, and it doesn't mean that I don't believe some things. But you ever watch Duck Dynasty?
I'm familiar with Duck Dynasty. I watch you and Jeff Cup sitting in church.
There really is this really good scene, and it's about the guys are trying to go get honey, and they find this beehive, and they can't get the honey, and they're trying to do all this stuff to get the honey, and they're just getting stung and stung and stung. Every time they go out there, they're just riling up all the bees, and finally Phil goes out there, and he just blows a bunch of smoke in there, and they all calm down, and he cuts down the branch, and he takes the beehive, and he gets all the honey. And I don't know that it's always the best idea in the world, but sometimes if everybody's already buzzing around and there's already a lot of energy, just don't add to it. I think there's just a little something to that.
Yeah, when everybody else is losing their head, if you can keep yours at that time,
if you can keep your head.
It's one of the greatest ways for people to see your good character. Is to see calmness in a time of trouble. And people are struggling. I will protect the unity of my church. The third step point is by following the leaders.
Yeah.
Now, we've never, at Heart of Junction, we've never demanded that that anybody just like jump through our hoops. But we are serious about the covenant. And this video today, the reason we're doing it is because we want you to know that even at a time when we can't be meeting one-on-one with everybody, I'm kind of even violating a little of my restrictions just by being here today. And it's hard to do things, but we want people to remain focused on the fact that we're not only Christians, but we're a part of the local body called Heart of Junction, and that we are expecting people to represent that.
And just kind of all going towards the same general goal together,
right?
Facing the same general direction.
Which is generally love God and love your neighbor.
Generally, that's exactly the deal. And so, and we don't, following the leaders is a pretty fun one, I think, to think about. We have a lot of people that check and balance us regularly. And so
we're not the only leaders at the church.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you're in Mrs. Crow's Sunday school class, you have a leader. The church has a leadership team that
they're doing things.
They're doing a lot of stuff.
An awful lot of things are going on. A lot of people.
So our second big point is I will share the responsibilities of my church, and the first subpoint under that is I will share the responsibility of my church by praying for its growth.
Yeah.
That's right now. I'm nervous.
Yeah.
It is hard going into an empty church building every day, and there's nobody in there, and
lights aren't on. There's no noise. There's nobody in town. There's nobody parking in the parking lot.
Right.
There's just nothing. And
so you use the opportunity that kind of presents itself through something like this to reach out to people, and I don't opportunities, growth. It all sounds so manipulative, like let's put our name on the bottles of water and things like this. And we've never tried to grow the church that way, but living things grow, healthy living things grow.
Sure.
And praying for church growth at a time like this. And that might be the only thing that you would do really at a time like this, is just to pray that our church would remain healthy and grow during this time. And then however that happens, I mean, we've been doing this in who's in your light thing.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever's in your light, you should be ministering to.
Should be
right now.
Be on the phone with them pretty often.
Yeah.
So I agree with all that. In praying for each other too. I mean, I know that's not necessarily what it says for sharing the responsibility of the church, but I know that's been happening a ton. I think even for me personally, it's not that I haven't ever prayed for the church or the growth of the church, but when you can't meet with the people and sort of do the work of the ministry of the church, there's a lot of times where I'm just kind of sitting at home for a few hours, and it's almost all you got left. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, if nobody else has answered the phone yet, or you've talked to 40 people already and your eyes are burning out, praying is what you got. So I think a lot of people have been doing a lot of that. And
it combines with Blythe's every day on YouTube. And if you go to YouTube and just search Heart of Junction Church, you'll find our channel. And I think just about every day, Blythe has put a prayer video up. And the second point here is I will invite the unchurched to attend. That may be a really good thing. You can share that.
Share a video.
You can share it on Facebook and say, hey, spend this video short. It's led by the Psalm of the day, which we're not in charge of.
Right.
And
right.
and it might just be something that people would want to join in with. And so I think you could help the church out by inviting the unchurched to attend even this one part. I tell you, if I was the parent of a teenager and was thinking I'd sure like to find a place for them to be, exposing myself and the family to that prayer time that Blythe does would probably make me interested in figuring out what's going on there when this whole thing settles down. So think about that. The third point we have in I will share the responsibility of my church. First one by praying for its growth. Second, by inviting the unchurched to attend. And the third is by warmly welcoming those who visit. I'm not sure how that happens in this time, but I think that there's possibilities even. I know you and Blythe are still on the move a lot. I'm locked in the house a little bit more.
Yeah.
But some of the stuff you're doing, some of the requests we're getting are not for church folks, they're for people outside the church.
Yeah.
And we've been given some benevolence money, and I've used one payment out of that for someone inside the church. The rest has been for folks outside the church. And so, and you don't have to send money into the church. You can check in, with people on your own, and
Absolutely.
if they need a roll of toilet paper, I think that's as warmly as
sure,
you
warmly
as you can welcome right now.
I think there is a little bit to be said though too for seasons, right?
Yeah.
There's different seasons. Like things really are different, and it's a weird thing to sort of work your way through. But sometimes there's a season just for planting some seed. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there might be some stuff that goes on now that ends up in someone being in a church or seeing a YouTube video 6 months from now. But it's from loving your neighbor as yourself
And
today.
And you can see, so our first big point is I'll protect the unity of my church. That's about us inside, about our family. I'll protect the responsibility of my church, what we just talked about. The responsibility of our church is to bring Christ to the community. And so that's what this is about. And there's opportunity for that. So our third big point. Patrick didn't think we could do this in 30 minutes. I'm gonna guarantee a 30-minute video. Our third point here is I will serve the ministry of my church, and so this is how we're reaching out to people. And Heart has always had a good rep for being ministry oriented. We're sort of famous for it. And I meet people and what's your church? And where do you pastor? And I tell them Heart Junction, and they're like, oh, that's the church and they know us because and it's never the church. It's always like, oh, Susie Cupp did this, or Lois Cook did that, and is that where Josh Budak goes to church, or is that where Patrick's at? And they're like, yeah, because the church is always ministering. I will serve the ministry of my church by discovering my gifts and talents. That's the first subcategory there. But I was thinking this is a great opportunity for people to actually spend reflective time in the Word. Yeah. Especially I'm literally thinking reflective time. What do I look like as a child of God? And we have some things that would help. In fact, I'd be really happy to forward via email a spiritual gifts conversation to people, and I mean it's something I'd much rather do a large in-depth Bible study on. But I think if you had that information and just look through it prayerfully, you could learn about yourself. You can learn about who and where you are.
This past week for me has been a pretty cool little time overall. Just sort of in my own head for a few things, right? So I've really enjoyed being not hurried, but I think it's exactly because of that. If you can sit down with yourself for 2 hours and ask yourself a few questions, like, what have I wanted to know? What have I wanted to get better at? You look at this list and you go, discovering your gifts and talents. Well, I don't have any. Yeah, you do. Maybe you should figure some of them out in the next 3 weeks. Yeah. So if the best thing that came out of this for some people was knowing what they were going to do to serve the ministry of the church after everything becomes normal again, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world at all.
Right.
It's coming up with something new that you want to do.
In fact, it could almost be future trouble to people, because when you do begin to understand how God's made you and how He intends to use you in the kingdom, this is just a warm-up. Blythe and I were talking that I never figured that my first apocalypse was going to look an awful lot like my dream Saturday. Just laying at home watching TV.
You've seen The Big Lebowski, right?
Yeah.
I saw a good meme the other day. It was like, it was one of those two-sided things. It's like what I thought it would look like is Mel Gibson and Mad Max, and is what the apocalypse actually looks like. And it's the dude in a grocery store with his slippers, and bathrobe, like trying to figure out which cheese to buy.
Yeah, and so we do have time during this whole deal to focus inward health in a healthy way. Yeah, not in a selfish way, but in a healthy way.
I think there's some biblical context for that too. Bunches and bunches of different people, but like Daniel for sure had a situation where he was exiled. He was away from Jerusalem. The temple was gone. Like, he was in a different place trying to figure out. He spent a lot of time.
He ate healthy food and he prayed.
He ate healthy food and he prayed. He was like in school.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Jesus spent 30 years before he kind of started out. Paul was out in the desert for 3 years figuring things out.
It's an opportunity here that we don't normally get.
Yeah, because everything is so fast and so now and so hustled all the time.
Exactly. So the second two subpoints on I will serve the ministry of my church are, first one is discovering my gifts and talents, being equipped to serve by my pastors, and by developing a servant's heart. And so what I will say at a practical level is we are taking notes. If we find people in need, we're trying to do things to respond. Some of these things I can do literally by giving somebody a City Market gift card, but we've done other things. There's already been a roof repaired, and there's other possibilities. And I have a feeling that as we get another week or two into this, that there's going to be more needs. Rachel Brown, if you call her and say, who do you know has a need that I could possibly meet, she might be able to match you up.
Yeah.
And if not, just say, well, put me on the list so to call me when the time comes. And the other thing by developing a servant's heart, one of the things that we're asking people to do is just make a note for your 3 or 4 or 5 neighbors that are the closest to you that you can tape to their door that says that if you are at risk or if there is a need that we can meet, I would love to try to help you. Yeah. And if it's something that's bigger than what you can do, come check in with us. I'll be very honest, the church is going broke right now. Yeah. But I don't know how much money we have. There is some that we can help people with. But
we've got good people.
We've got good people, and that's how we've always been. So the fourth big point, yes. I will support the testimony of my church by attending faithfully. I just
turn on that YouTube channel.
Yeah, it's YouTube right now. Connecting with one another. There are actually some of the groups are already doing some things. What was the program that the Thursday night
house party?
It's called House Party, and it took them a few minutes to get used to it. I know that if you use Zoom to meet together in some small groups, you have to have a secret password because
Blythe can help you work that out.
Blythe can help with that. But you can actually, the grandmas, for instance, probably have the capability to get together and meet. And Blythe can talk you through getting that set up, or by now you might be able to.
Yeah, not really, but the Wednesday night study, got some younger guys, got people working and doing a lot of different things. But we had a pretty funny, just like little group text message on Wednesday night. It was hilarious, shooting pictures back and forth, and it was a good little time. There's some ways to do it. Attendance just looks different for a while.
I think getting on there for the sermon. Your sermon had a good amount of viewership and things. When you get on for the sermon, stay there. Don't
write some comments.
Yeah. At the very least, leave it on and leave your phone set down until we're done. It makes us feel better. We can tell when you walk away or change it, move on to somewhere else on Facebook when you do that. So, but if you could still attend that faithfully, we would be really appreciative. Living a godly life. I've heard, it doesn't seem like almost anybody I'm talking to is just status quo right now. It feels like it's getting better for them to live a godly life, or it's tougher. Mm-hmm. Joshua Chamberlain talked about war, and he says, war makes good men better and bad men worse. And I think something like what we're going through right now can do the same thing. Mm-hmm. We need to be committed to a godly lifestyle. Yeah. At a time like this, your Bible reading is probably more important than ever, and not that it's ever not important, but
there's time there, and things are difficult, and things are a little bit different for everybody too. I know that. You got kids at home that aren't usually at home. Like it's not like you don't have to fight for it just because there's less going on. But it's super, super important right now. I think praying, especially developing a sort of a consistent, ongoing, that relational type of prayer. It's going to be a big deal. Like not panicking, just a little bit, best you can.
Right,
it's a big deal.
And then the fourth one, I'll support the testimony of my church by giving regularly. And everyone at heart knows that I hate talking about this. This is tough right now. It's a very, very, very tough time. I had to sneak down to the church today reconnect the internet because we hadn't paid the bill. We had the money for it, but we don't have a lot right now. And there have been several people who have made sure that their regular gifts have come in, and those folks are keeping us afloat right now. I really want to encourage you. I don't know that there's ever been a time in our church history where we've needed people more to support the testimony of the church by giving regularly. And I know.
And that's saying something for our place.
It is. And I know that, what a terrible time to ask for this commitment. But there's so many promises. I think about in Samuel, God says, if you've honored me, I'll honor you. And I think that, all the verses we ever hear, I know that we've got a list of verses on our actual sheet here, but I really do want to ask people to step out in faith. Heck, the government's supposed to come through on your behalf at some point in the next couple of weeks. Maybe that'll give you some confidence. I think I would never tell anybody that has just lost their job. You keep your family safe first.
It's not like we don't understand.
Yeah, we do understand. Right. And you know what? In the end, we're probably not going to be any worse off than anybody else. And if the lights get shut off, or you and I don't get a couple of paychecks, we'll figure out ways to survive.
A lot worse things have happened.
A lot worse things have happened. But it is important. It is important at a time like this. And if you've stayed with the video for this long, I just want to ask you to do that. And so you can do that just by sending a check to the church at 755 North 4th. Zach or Blythe, or even myself, once every 2 or 3 days, getting down there and opening the mailbox, and that would be helpful. You can also give it through the Breeze Giving, which I don't have that information at my fingertips. But I tell you, I think when we post this on YouTube, we'll see if Blythe can't put the entire list of our covenant list on there, and then maybe at the bottom of that she can add the giving instructions. But yeah,
I hear there's a really good video that was filmed last Friday night about tithing too, on Bible Thumper podcast.
Oh, Patrick,
Facebook.
Yes, and I hadn't had a chance to look at that yet, but
it was a good one. I mean, they're all funny, but it was a good one.
Patrick has a lot to say on that. So, all right. Well, do you have anything to add when you just think about about all of this?
I'm looking forward to going back to the way that things were. But I said it on Sunday when I was preaching. Being disengaged from everything for just a little bit, and to kind of sit down and think about some things. I know some guys at some other churches, talked to some other pastors, and I know Darren's been saying this for 20 years, but it really is, it's good to pastor at Hardin Junction. I think it's a different thing than there are some other places. I know some other churches that times are an awful lot tougher. And
it's as soon as Rachel started making those phone calls to find needs, she was getting, I'll help.
Yeah.
And it was hard to find needs.
The help sheet is just full.
The first needs we hear about are really for neighbors and things like that. And so I think all in all, there's nothing about what's gone on lately that doesn't make me happy to be at Heart of Junction. Yeah, because we're doing Heart of Junction stuff at a time like this. It's just, it is a different time. There's just no doubt about that. I feel a little sad that I feel like I put a lot on Blythe and Zach, because the first thing I got was an email telling me that you are one of those higher risk people. And I don't know. I
spent a lot of time on the phone though. Like, it's not. Yeah. It was a lot tougher when you were doing radiation.
Yeah.
To pick up the slack now. So.
Yep. And I did the same thing then. Well, I am really excited because I'm going to turn this off at 30 minutes on the dot, and that's going to make Patrick blow a gasket.
I can hear the blood shooting out of Patrick. Thanks a bunch, man, for having us over and using the equipment.
Thanks, Patrick.